What is going on, you guys? My name is Rayge, and we are back today with a huge Dark Dimension 6 mistake that I'm seeing across not just my alliance mates, but as well across the wider community in terms of how resources are actually being utilized and maximized. So obviously, at the end of the day, I want to help you guys unlock Super Skrull as soon as possible, so that way not only you're going to get that immediate impact to your account, but you're going to get dividends from having him longer and being able to provide value across all game modes. Now, we know that the new out-of-time team, respectively with Black Knight, is going to be a direct counter to Super Skrull, but that does not diminish his value in where he is right now. He's still hands down the best character in the game, and even with a counter, he's still going to be able to provide immense value and benefit across all the other game modes, and that's just how prominent these characters have become when they are released. Now, having said that, guys, I do want to quickly talk about why you should take my advice seriously, because I did do something that was not done by other content creators, which is actually unlocking Dark Dimension 6 and beating it twice in the top 1500 rank completely free to play. I also did it without utilizing Big Apocalypse. So the reason for that is because I didn't have materials and resources. I pride myself in resource management, and that's really how I was able to do that, right? And as you can see here, guys, it was only 30 million total combat power to demonstrate that Dark Dimension 6 is not a roster check. It's about building quality characters, but as well being very mindful of the strategy implemented and how you're managing each and every kind of section of the Dark Dimension, almost like a puzzle, right? I've prided myself in this, and it's the first time that I actually achieved such a monumental milestone in the previous year. So I want to talk about that. Obviously this advice is very important and meaningful to me, and that's why I want to share this insight, and especially with these mistakes that I'm kind of seeing consistently being made. It's huge and can add potentially months to your farming grind, and that time elapse is going to be meaning that time that you didn't have a chance to actually unlock Super Skrull sooner rather than later. So first and foremost, number one, the mistake that I'm seeing with folks is that we're getting too excited about these new characters getting released. We're upgrading tunes way too early before we actually make their assessment on their impact. But as well, we're getting excited about entering into Dark Dimension 6, but really we're actually creating that bottleneck for ourselves. Augmented Tempered Osmium is an excellent example of how that's happening, right? As you can see from left to right, we have some very meta characters. Osmium is probably the most congested as it is in terms of a unique. We have Gambit being part of the Extreme X-Men team that got reworked and newly added as a raid incursion team. We have Iron Man Infinity War part of Pegasus. Morgan Le Fay, who was very prominent still with the Darkhold team, although they have fallen out of the meta. When she originally came in, they were the go-to meta team, so everyone brought her up. We have Nightcrawler being part of Gambit's team with Extreme, but as well having value in the future here, especially knowing that there's going to be more X-Men reworks coming. We got Nova, who preemptively was the first legendary of 2023 to be released, but his value has gotten diminished just due to the fact that Nowhere is pretty much only good for war. However, Nova is actually a really decent Dark Dimension character, so if you want to bring him up, I still would recommend him, but again, they all share the osmium. Ronin's probably the only one I don't recommend from this list, even though with him being a newer team, being New Avengers, they're war specific, but there's just too many good choice of characters, and in my honest opinion, I think out of this mix here, Val is the most important osmium character because especially given how difficult the cosmic section can be, Val's revive and supportive capabilities, crowd controlling aspects, really important. So I want to talk about osmium here because of the fact that I'm seeing this constraint and mistake being made numerous times by folks, which is they're bringing up characters that are fresh and new right now. So let's use both Gambit and Nightcrawler as an example. They both are part of the new raid team, right? And they both can be used in the global section. Great. So they're going to provide really strong value Dark Dimension 6 naturally if you think about it, right? And they're not actually that expensive. They're actually pretty decent, but it's the cost of the osmium adding up per character, and it's hard to get these uniques because you're only getting it through the store or by the unfortunate chance if you actually luck out on the RNG for the raid orb drops. If you build both Nightcrawler and Gambit, it's going to be really meaningful for your global section. But then shortly afterwards, you're going to have the cosmic section where Val is likely needed, and if you don't have Val, it's pretty difficult to get through it. So I'm seeing this issue already kind of related, is that folks are getting excited building up both Gambit and Nightcrawler gear tier 18, and then they're going to be left waiting now and farming uniques specifically for Val, and Val is actually a little bit pricier in terms of the mini uniques as well, so creating that natural bottleneck. we need to be more mindful of how we're planning and bringing up characters. I wouldn't recommend gear tier 18 until you know for sure that you can actually start not just the section that you're doing in Dark Dimension, but as well as the next section. So for example, if I see that I had enough materials to bring up Gambit, Nightcrawler, and Val, then yes, I would say go ahead by all means, gear tier 18 all 3 of them. But if you only have materials for 2 out of the 3 characters, you can bring in one of the global ones and as well as Val for the next one. And that's kind of what I mean. Like, we need to have that mindset about the next steps, right? Rather than focused on the section that we're in. Another great example is also, Morgan Le Fay and Nova. They're both in the legendary section, but you don't want to build these characters up before you're even doing the global and cosmic section. And that's kind of where the bottlenecks we're seeing, all of them adding up eventually, and you're creating the bottleneck and restraint for yourself and left in that pinch for gear because now you're relying on luck to get these uniques going forward. Another great example I want to point out is the Astral Energy situation, right? There's actually a lot of good tunes now being slotted in Astral Energy, but the most important one is going to be Apocalypse. You basically need him. It's the Apocalypse show for the global section. And if you build up other tunes like Icarus, Philavel, I personally brought in Phoenix. I thought she was pretty decent in Dark Dimension, and she's getting a confirmed rework as well in the future now. So there's immediate value right there. We also have Sunspot here being part of, again, that new Extreme X-Men team. So there's a lot of good characters, but if you bring up these other tunes before Apocalypse, then you're once again going to be farming and waiting for a character that's actually more meaningful than the other ones, right? And that's what I mean. We have to be more mindful about upgrading tunes way too early. I wouldn't recommend it, at least until you have the section that you're doing right now and the next section, so that way it doesn't slow you down, right? Obviously, it's not a sprint anyways, but we're creating these natural bottlenecks for ourselves, adding, again, weeks to months farming the gear because of that one little mistake that we made, pressing the upgrade button a little too early than when we should have. Another good example here as well, tied back to kind of what we're seeing with the uniques, is that we also need to have some balanced origin traits. And what you can see here right now, circle guys, is from left to right, right? It's the bio gear, the mutant, I believe that's mystic, skill, and then tech. We need to have balanced traits across the board here. And what I'm looking at right now is the Dark Dimension 6 planner. I made a video on this planner as well, so I'll link it below if you guys want a better breakdown. But when you're going through and planning, just make sure you're balancing out all the traits as I have circled in the yellow here, because of the fact that it's important to have that. If you have too many materials in one specific origin trait, you're not going to be building up those characters later on, right? So you can see even across the multitude of different sections here, we're pretty well balanced, right? Couple mutant, skill, biotech, and then mixing it up along the way. And by doing so, it's going to create a more well-balanced progression and really minimize the downtime that you'll be waiting on sections. Because let's just say if you went in on full Pegasus for the global section, that's 5 tech characters. That's gonna be potentially a bottleneck for later city if you want to bring in a character like Vulture. It's going to be later on constricting you for cosmic section if you want to bring in Kang, because he's also tech, and then more so the legendary section with Green Goblin and Doc Ock, right? Again, this is not like the best team, but I just wanted to show you a balanced team situation, because that's ultimately my mindset when I was going through and planning ahead. And the Dark Dimension 6 planner, like I said guys, it's on the MarvelStrikeForce.com. Absolutely huge in adding value to better plan and how you're going to be progressing while minimizing that downtime. So guys, key takeaways here, again, take your time. You can be smart about it, right? Other content creators, other players have already completed Dark Dimension, so we can learn from their mistakes, myself included. There's big traps that are all along the way with these new teams, and I think that's one thing that many folks are forgetting. A big one is hive mind. I get this question asked actually consistently, which is, should we bring in Carnage and Venom into the city section? In my honest opinion, guys, I think they're great characters, especially with their value and rates, but they're just not a Dark Dimension team. Anytime you build up a character in Dark Dimension, we should have the mentality that we can further bring them up into the next Dark Dimension and beyond. I saw this issue already when I brought them into Dark Dimension 3, and I knew right away they probably weren't going to make it for the future rendition of it. So that's kind of what I alluded to before. You always want to invest with that future mindset. Miasma is another big one too, because there's a lot of tunes now sharing miasma, so we need to be mindful of that. But again, I didn't want to spend too much time talking about the same concept in this video, but just for things you guys should be thinking about. It's quality over quantity unless you want to be strategic and minimizing and maximizing value, and that's why it's good to mix cheap and as well as expensive characters, so that way it's going to be a balanced approach across the different traits, across the different uniques. And guys, just as a big reminder too, it's not just the gold that's going to be required for Dark Dimension, right? Catalysts and uniques are big. There's a huge account impact afterwards when you do this because your account's going to be left in that deficit position. So that's why we need to be mindful of what we're doing right now, especially in this endgame PvE mode. But as well, let's not forget that the big boy Apocalypse upgrades also requires 23 tunes to gear tier 17, level 90, and all their required uniques, right? So it all adds up over time and accumulates. Being very mindful of that, guys. But hopefully my insight and knowledge here helps you guys in your journey to unlock Super Skrull faster. Again, I do appreciate your guys' time. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.